What's up, everybody? This is Charlie Potter, senior team writer of BamaOnLine.com, joined once again by Tim Watts and Blake Byler to talk a little hoops. Big week for Alabama, another 2-0 week. I don't know what it is. It's this show, man. I guess it's just the special sauce that the team needed. It was a late night in Starkville last night. I know Blake went to the game, had to make that drive back to swerve around some deer. I was actually coming back from Mobile from the Senior Bowl, been down there for a couple of days. So it was a late night, but got that text message from Tim that demanded he needed more FaceTime on the show. So we're here this morning. He said 52 minutes on a live recruiting show. That's not enough for me.
So, I need more cowbell is what I need.
I'm just kidding. It's we like doing this. And honestly, this basketball team is a lot of fun to watch. I think the last two games, though, we're going to start just briefly touching on the LSU game this past Saturday. That one's probably a little closer than we thought going into it. I know you guys had some just, raving reviews of the Tigers going into that matchup, but Alabama won 80-73 in Coleman Coliseum. Big night for Aiden Holloway. They had several guys that were able to, score in double figures, but Tim, looking at that game against LSU on Saturday, was it closer than you anticipated? I know there's something that happened in the second half we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but before that, just your overall thoughts on that game against LSU.
It was closer. I didn't factor in the football player coming in. The one thing I think I underestimated and everybody did was LSU's long. They are extremely long. They are extremely athletic. They were very physical. They weren't giving anything easy. They played really hard on both ends. I didn't expect a letdown game. I don't think LSU's in the top half of the SEC. I will say the LSU team that Alabama played probably is in that top 10 and improving despite, they've had some major injuries. But I don't think it was as close as people thought it was. They kept calling it a letdown game, but with 10 minutes left to go in the game, they were up 7. I don't think it ever got within a bucket. Pushed it out there. Now, it is a little bit disturbing that there was like a 3 or 4 minute when they were up 7. There's like a 3 or 4 minute window where LSU didn't score, neither did Alabama. So that's kind of, I think, where a lot of us expect, okay, here we go to 17, here we go to 20, and then ride it on out. But I mean, they closed the game out well. I mean, obviously the drama that was there in the second half, although there's a lot of effort, but I do think and others and that Alabama basketball team underestimated their length. They were long, very athletic.
Yeah, they were. I think they ended up with 43 rebounds, and that's only 2 more than Alabama. But you look at a guy like Corey Chest. I looked at Blake at halftime and just pointed at my screen, and everybody's made note of it on social media, but he had 15 rebounds in the first half, which is insane. He only ended up with 18, so he had a little bit of a drop-off in the second half. But from the length standpoint, from maybe a letdown, just the overall effort of the team, Blake, what did you think of that LSU game on Saturday?
I thought about the first half. It felt a little too similar to the Ole Miss game that happened about a week and a half earlier, in that it's a team that Alabama's better than, and they have better players than. And I was also impressed with LSU's length and athleticism, better than I expected. I'm done not respecting the opponent on this show. I'm just going to put that out there.
We'll see. We got it. We'll get to that later. We'll see.
But like, the first half was not great from an effort standpoint. And you saw that with a 40-40 tie, and a lot of that coming off of LSU leading the rebounding battle by like 8 or 9 at halftime. They led the offensive rebounding battle by like 4 or 5 at halftime. Corey Chest had 15 rebounds. Like that shouldn't happen when you have a team that's as good rebounding as Alabama is at home. Like, that shouldn't be an issue. The good news was you saw a much better effort in the second half, and so you didn't let the Ole Miss thing happen again, where you let it continue and really get worse in the second half throughout the game. They played better in the second half, and really the game was closer than I expected going in, but also the game was closer. Like, the score was closer than the game really was by the end of it, because Alabama was up by like 13 with about 2 minutes to go after they went on a little run towards the end of the game. And then I think this has happened a couple times where the defense has gotten a little lax closing out a game when you have a double-digit lead and a team gets it down to 7 or 8 or whatever it ended up being. But overall, I thought the second half was a lot better. It wasn't the best shooting night ever but I thought Cliff Amore played great in the second half, especially after Nate Oates challenged him, benched him to start the second half, and then he came in and played one of his best halves, I think, of SEC play. Mo Diabate was good. Aiden Holloway was great. Like a lot of guys stepped up in that second half and really showed the depth that Alabama has, especially like I'm assuming we're about to get to, sitting Mark Sears for the final 20 minutes and not seeing him on the floor.
One thing I'd like to add, Charlie, is that Blake, that's a good point. If you watch the last 2 minutes of the first half, they scored 7 points against Alabama. Again, that's Bama scored 7, but you're kind of expecting Alabama to go 7 for 2 there, 9 for a bucket or something. And again, you're right, in the second half, it was the exact same thing, not closing them out, getting comfortable when they're in that lead. And that's got to be something they're going to address. And I will say, I don't think they do that against really good teams. But I think other teams, I mean, we saw it against Vanderbilt. They went on that heater to get down, cut it to 8 real quick, and they're like, oh, crap, we got to go. So really good point.
Yeah, I think Nate Oates would like to see his team, for lack of a better word, just kind of step on a team's neck. It felt like they've just blown a team out here lately. So I think that's what he wants to see. And the effort, that's what he wants to see from everybody, and that's evident by what he did in the second half with Mark Sears. Mark was scoreless in the first half. I don't think he played particularly bad to warrant a second half benching, but he wasn't happy with the effort, the response, and Mark watched the rest of the game from the bench. And so that was a story that obviously you have to ask about it after the game, but it lingered into the days leading up to the Mississippi State game. And a lot was said, a lot was made of something that didn't keep Mark out of the starting lineup the very next game. He started in Starkville. So when you see that from Nate Oates, and then you see the response from Mark Sears, now that we kind of have the full picture, we don't know exactly everything that happened in the locker room. I don't think we will, and that's kind of to be expected, Tim. But when you see now, you have a look at kind of the bigger picture. What do you make of what happened in the second half at LSU with Mark?
For me, a lot of times, speaking as a parent and a smartass, it's usually the second reaction that causes the disciplinarian to lose his mind. It's not that, Tim, you messed up. It's the me pouting or going in the corner or kicking my car or slamming my little brother, body slamming my little brother. So sometimes that escalates, and that very well could have been what it was. I mean, Mark's had a good year. He's a great player. He's had a good career, and everything else. And emotions run deep in those games. And I don't think, everybody understands how quick, when you see a Malachi kick a football, when you see a guy yell at his coach or bump his teammate, that happens really spur of the moment. It's not like he went into that game planning to do it. So I think that's probably because you saw Cliff go back in there. Now, Cliff, he played like his pants were on fire, right? I mean, he was in there. That was a big part of that second half defense doing much better because the bigs really feasted. And again, you pointed out he had, Big Boy had 15 rebounds in the first half, 3 in the second half. That's probably Cliff putting a body on him and riding him out of there. But I mean, again, it's sports. I mean, stuff that happens in the locker room. We used to go to high school games and teammates were fighting each other and then hugging after the game. So it's very emotional. And of course, Mark's, for me, it's the benefit of the doubt thing with Mark. Mark's been here a while. I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him. Other people that cover that are going to play against Alabama, sports writers talk about him. So just a bad moment. And, I think it's the speculation. It's like somebody rolls their ankle in a game and they're like, oh, my God, that's an ACL. He's done. It's over. He knows. Look, he's crying. And I'm like, geez, Louise, give me a break. I think that's the reaction to Mark. What if he's done? Should we cut him? Does he need to play again? I think probably, yeah, he should play again.
I will say we've seen a lot of what look like season-ending injuries for guys to come right back on the court.
Oh my God! Did y'all see the Tennessee guy? Did y'all see the Tennessee guard?
Ziegler. Hubbard's looked bad last night.
Yeah.
Ziegler just ran off the court, which you would have assumed was had a previous knee injury. He just bolted off the floor I'm like he was distraught, and then he's warming up the second half. I was like, we do see a lot of I'm dead. Okay, I'm good.
I mean, Oscar season's coming up. That's what it feels like. So, but with Mark, I think my thoughts are Nate Oates has been with him for 3 years now. He knows how to coach Mark Sears, and the way that he talked about him on Hey Coach on Monday night, whenever he was talking to reporters on Tuesday, it sounds like Mark responded to the tough coaching and had 2 really good practices, and it showed up in the game against Mississippi State. What do you think about it, Blake, when you look at it, and not only just what happened, but the way that Mark was able to kind of respond and bounce back the way that NATO's wanted?
I mean, I think he responded the exact way that we all expected him to. I mean, he's an All-American for a reason. He's not a player that has been known to have attitude problems throughout his career. He's not a player that's ever been suspended, at least in his Alabama career. I don't know about his Ohio career, but I imagine not. Like he's a guy who has taken tough challenges publicly from Nate Oates before in his career and responded well to them multiple times. So like the fact that Nate Oates came up on Tuesday and said, yeah, Mark's had his best 2 practices back to back since he's been here doesn't surprise me at all. The fact that he went last night and had 17 and shot the ball well and had 9 assists doesn't surprise me at all. Like that's what I expect from a player who we know is as good and works as hard as Mark Sears does. And the other thing with that, like, I don't think anyone should have an issue with the way that Nate Oates handled it and his decision to bench Sears. And like you mentioned it, Charlie, like us as reporters and fans, like none of us know how to coach this team like Nate Oates does. We're not in the building every day. We haven't spent every day the past 3 years with Mark Sears being Oates' longest tenured player on this current roster. Like I think if anyone knows how to get him to respond and how to get the best out of him, it would be his head coach for the past 3 seasons that also helped develop him into an All-American. Like I think he deserves a little benefit of the doubt. And then there's also kind of the misunderstanding that I think initially a lot of people thought it was because of his play, like because he had 0 points in the first half that led to him being benched. And Nate didn't flat out say it, but it's pretty obvious that it wasn't just due to him going scoreless in the first half. It wasn't just due to his on-the-court play. His on-the-court play wasn't great, but that alone didn't warrant the second half benching. There was clearly other things going on with a challenge, with a response to a challenge. And he alluded to it with Cliff, saying that, Cliff responded the way we wanted, so he got back in the game and was able to play really well. And that's what he was looking for from Sears in that moment. It seems like we've gotten that from Sears now, but you can't just look at it in a vacuum of Sears scored 0 points in the first half and that led to Oates benching him or embarrassing him or anything like that. Like that's clearly not what happened. And also clearly it has worked out in a positive manner, leading to Sears playing well, Alabama getting another big win on the road. And it's really nothing. Like now we look back and it's like, who cares? It doesn't even matter anymore.
The thing that's really odd is what was Nate Oates saying about Mark Sears the Wednesday before that game? Yeah. He gave a friggin' 4. I've never in my whole collective life, nobody's ever said that many nice things about me, and I couldn't put it in 3 minutes. I mean, it was like clearly the respect that was there. I think the social media stuff, the mom being a mom, which I mean, I covered AAU basketball. I've seen it all. Moms are going to be moms. I think everybody took it to a different level. But I can tell you, the parents don't always feel the same way that the people do. So I do see how it kind of spiraled, but I don't know how you don't give Nate Oates the benefit of the doubt at this stage. And how do you not give Mark Sears the benefit of the doubt? You know what I mean? Argue with my wife. We don't divorce. She tries. I won't let her leave. But I'm saying you can have a bad moment. So,
yeah, I mean, I think with Nate Oates too, like given what he said just the game prior to the LSU game, I think that I don't want to say he holds Mark to a higher standard, but he knows what that guy is capable of. And if he's not giving that, if he's not responding to things the way he should, then there's going to be some kind of reaction from Nate Oates. So it is, yeah, it's funny because like on the last show we said, do we talk enough about Mark Sears? And now we probably talked too much about Mark Sears, and this is what happened. So again, we're to blame for the outcome, I guess. So
it's on us.
Yeah, we'll take that on the chin. But last night though, Mark and the team was able to respond to a tough physical game at Mississippi State. I wasn't able to watch it. I was actually listening to it on the radio. And actually, kudos to Lawson Schaefer, who was filling in for Brian Passink on the radio call with Chris Stewart. He did a good job in the first half. The second half, it kind of cut out for me a little bit. So I don't know. I don't want to give him too much props, but really good in the first half from Lawdagger. And looking at this game, Alabama was able to win 88-84 on the road. They shot 48% from three. So the offense was clicking pretty well, but that's a good Mississippi State team to go on the road and beat. I think that's seven in a row over the Bulldogs. I think 3 in a row in Starkville. My math is right. You see how confident I sound in that. But what was your overall thoughts on that win at Mississippi State, Tim?
Yeah, I thought it was. What I watch are these last 2 games really tell you you're getting what you might expect in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you're getting guys that are going to come in, put hands on. You ran into that a few years ago with San Diego State, right? Now you're getting this because, and I don't mean this in a slight, but LSU and Mississippi State are palsy. They get their hands on you. They come across your forearms. A lot of steals are, a little bit questionable. So they're letting you know to protect that ball. But, I mean, to go in there hostile, to lose the lead at one point, I think they were down 70-67, they were down 3 or whatever it was, have that crowd in it and still come back. But again, the free throws, I mean, I don't know, I've never, can you be bipolar shooting free throws? Because Bama is really good or really bad. There's not like we're okay. Mm-hmm. It's like 90%, 40%, there's no 70%. But I'll take that win all day long, closed it out. I know we're going to talk about some of the players later on, but Aiden Holloway, that's probably who's the guy we don't talk about enough. I know we're going to talk about Chris later, but Aiden Holloway was just fantastic. I thought Mark, I know he had 7 turnovers, and I'm well aware of it because everybody texted me, but he had some brilliant passes in the lane for assist. And when you do that and you feel yourself, he did make a couple of 3 unwise pass choices. But when you've had that confidence of success, you do that. But he shot the ball well, did everything he needed to. You saw him battle, and that wasn't an easy game. I mean, Jaron obviously had his worst game of the year, and I think people have been yelling to get him out of the starting lineup. That's another discussion. But I'm not telling Nate Oates who to start. I just don't feel like I've got qualifications to say, here's your rotation, coach. Let's do this. I just don't. That's not me.
Yeah, it is tough. I will say, though, Jaron didn't have a turnover. They had 14 as a team. No turnovers from Jaron. Mark had half of them. But you're right. The 9 assists were impressive. Heck, I mean, the way that he was rebounding the ball, too, with
Absolutely.
6, he was close to a triple-double. And to do that after what we just talked about, I think says a lot about Mark Sears. But I mean, just the way that the offense was able to click a little better. They were 15-31 from 3. I know you wrote about that this morning, Blake. Just what did you think of that and really just the game overall being there in Starkville?
I mean, 3-point shooting was great. Their best 3-point shooting game, I would say their best 3-point shooting game of the season. It was technically their second best percentage-wise, but they shot like 56% at Purdue, which I didn't even realize until I looked it up, but they did it on half the attempts. They couldn't really get shots off that game. Right. So to go on the road and shoot in the way that they did, I think it shows the progress this team is making as a 3-point shooting team. And we kind of talked earlier in the season, they weren't shooting the ball well, and Oates would kind of talk about all the things they needed to do. They've dealt with a lot of injuries to a lot of shooters, losing Latrell Wrightsell, not having Youngblood to start out, briefly having Millette and then losing Millette, Sears being in a slump at the start of the year. Holloway was still finding his footing. So you have all of these kind of mixed variables as far as the shooting goes. And now you kind of know your top 3 shooters are Sears, Youngblood, and Holloway. Order them any way you want. You want those 3 guys taking the bulk of the shots. They combined for 22 attempts last night and made 13 of them. That's 59%. That's really, really good. All 3 of them are shooting, I think, minimum 38% in league play. So in SEC play as a team, they're shooting 36%, which is way better than the 32% they were shooting as a team heading into SEC play. So you're seeing improvements on the 3-point shooting. A lot of that is coming from getting the bulk of your shots to your best shooters, which has been huge. As far as the win goes, I'm going to sound like a a broken record because I feel like I just said all of these things about the Kentucky game not too long ago, but it's another instance where you're on the road, you're in a really tough environment. The atmosphere in the Hump was great. They have like 9,000 fans. They pack them all in. It's like right on top of the court. The crowd pops are insane when they hit a three or start to go on a run. But every time Mississippi State would go on a run, Alabama wouldn't let the Mississippi State lead get out to 5 or 7 points.
Mm-hmm.
It got as high as 1 or 3 in the second half. And every time Alabama finds a way to answer. And that's something that's really impressive about this team and has been in their last couple road wins. I think beating 3 top 15 teams on the road, their last 3 road games. Like every time the opposing arena starts to get into it, they do something to shut them up. And it shows the kind of mental resolve and the chip that this team has to be able to do that and to be able to find a way to dig down and answer every time. Well, one moment that really stuck out to me was Mississippi State went on Bama went on the 8-0 run to start the second half and went up by 7-8 points or whatever it was. And then State came back and took a 61-60 lead. And I think it was like either an 8-0 or a 10-0 run, something like that. And like the building was on fire. Everyone expected that after this dunk to put them ahead, Alabama was going to call a timeout. And Nate just said, go. Like he just told them to keep going. They went down, and that's a risky play. But they go down, and Holloway gets a floater, and the building goes quiet. And that's those are the kind of plays that change the momentum of the game whenever you have an opposing crowd that's super into it and they're about to go on a run. Like if Nate had called a timeout there, the place goes crazy, and then you have to kind of dig in and build off of that with no momentum. You don't get to go in transition, and it's a lot harder to get a bucket with their defense set and the crowd into it. So it's a risky play because if you miss it, they could go and continue their run, but that just shows the trust that Nate has in these guys and the way that they perform on the road. Like there's no reason not to trust them. So it's been pretty great, insane to see the way that they've performed on the road. And it's been huge as far as SEC title hopes and playing away from home in March, because you don't play home games in March. It's great to see how they play against tough environments, hostile environments.
Tim, I don't mean this any disrespectful way, but as an old basketball head, what do you make of Nate's kind of willingness to keep those timeouts in his pocket? Because it feels like sometimes you have to pry him out of his hands.
I mean, some coach just believes. I mean, I've seen him just run them out there and just let him keep playing. You don't always. I mean, to me, the timeout is to calm a team down who's emotionally distraught or to run a play. I think they did that at the end of the first half. Was that the LSU game? I think Grant got to the free throw line, missed an open look, but they call a timeout to run a play in that situation. I don't think you have to panic with the 7-0. Basketball is nothing but runs, right? Yeah. It's nothing but runs. You're going to have 7-0 runs. I mean, one of my worst fears with my friend group is Bama gets up 17 early against a really good team, knowing that's probably not going to be a 62-point win like they want. And then, it gets down to 4 and they're like, we blew it, but I agree. You trust your team. And look, the one thing I think you have to factor in the timeouts is your team. How much leadership do you have out there? I mean, Aiden, he doesn't play like a sophomore. Aiden plays like a more mature player. LeBaron still shows the immaturity of a true freshman, but Aiden plays like he's Mark, Chris, and those guys. So I think you can trust them to put the ball in your hand. And how many times have we seen Mark hit a 3 to shut the crowd up? I mean, deep, from almost at the logo. So, you got Mark out there. Now you got Chris out there. You got Grant. Haven't even mentioned Grant. I want to discuss his free throws later, by the way. But, yeah, I'm okay with it. I mean, every coach has his way. We say that about Nick Saban. Nick Saban literally, I think, thought you could turn him in at the end of the game and get your deposit back. Like it was a glass bottle when I was a kid. You turn it in, you get 5 cents. I think Nick thought he got 100 back or something. But I got no issues with it.
Well, you mentioned Chris Youngblood. He had a huge game last night, 23. Got the start, went 7 of 10 from 3, just was insane. I think he's been in double figures in 4 of his last 6. So he's really, this is Nate Oates' words. This is his coming out party in Starkville. Nate Oates' words again, not mine. But what do you make of his play last night and of late, Tim?
He's fantastic. He's everything, I really wanted to see him, Houston and Trelly on the floor at the same time, spreading out in those corners. I mean, that was what I was excited. I think a lot of people were. Chris is fantastic. He shot so quick. That's an NBA jump shot. There's no hesitation. Houston was that way and Trelly was that way. They're just locked and loaded. No matter where they're at, their feet are set. They're ready to shoot. Last night he wasn't hitting all open threes. He was like, they're coming off the screen, getting them into that corner. He was hitting shots. They were contested. The thing I like about him is his confidence. Against LSU, they blocked Stretch blocked that three Chris took, and Chris he didn't even hesitate getting back down the floor to help defend. And again, you can't really defend that, but it just shows the heart he's got. He's going to go after him. There was a game before. Who was that when he was in the right corner and they blocked it and Mo saved it, kicked it out to LeBaron? Was that Kentucky? But I'm saying Chris is fearless, and I like that about him. He's also really good, which helps. It's easier to be fearless when you're that good and you're that talented. And he's an enforcer. He was told that LSU, in that LSU game when that guy was going off, he was defending him in the post. And when they couldn't feed the post, he's balled up his fist, not like he's going to hit him, but like, yeah, bring it. And that guy was having a heck of a game. So I'm a big fan of Chris, obviously.
Yeah, Chris is a pit bull out there for sure. What do you make of his game last night and of late here, Blake?
It's what Alabama thought they were going to get with him whenever they signed him out of the portal, and it's what they haven't been able to get because of the injury and how long it's kind of taken him to ramp up. I think his first big game where we really started to see what he could be was Texas A&M. I think he hit 4 threes or something like that in that game. And then he's been big in most games since then. He hit a bunch of threes against Kentucky. And then to go 7 of 10 in one game, I asked him after the game, if he'd ever gone 7 of 10 in a game before. And he was like, I'm pretty sure I have. He hasn't. I looked it up. It was his career high in 3-point makes in a game.
Maybe high school.
Yeah, he's hit 6 before in a college game, but he had never hit 7 before. And each one of them came like right at a point where Alabama needed it too, especially down the stretch in the second half. They went down 3. He hit one to tie it. I think they were tied, and he hit one to go up 3. They were all very timely, which is huge. And also, he just from a leadership standpoint, he's probably the most vocal leader that Alabama has, and you can see in pretty much every huddle, he's the one speaking up. He's the one talking, getting guys on the same page. Oates talked about kind of throughout his injury how good of a leader he was, but he mentioned, I'm ready to get him back on the floor because you can only lead so much from the sideline. He can do so much more when he's actually in the game with these guys, and it's great. And I like having him in the starting lineup. You were talking, Tim, about people not wanting Jaren to start or whatever. As far as who to be in the starting lineup, I don't know if they're moving Chris out of it now that he's in it. Like he's played great the last 2 games, really the last 4 or 5 games, but it's great to see him hitting his stride. Him being in the starting lineup gives another really good shooter to play off of Mark, which is really nice to have. And it's just he's the kind of guy that like everyone wants in their program, a vocal leader, a sharpshooter, a guy who can kind of calm everyone down inside the huddle and do everything like that. He's a great player, really fun to watch. And it's great to see him now that he's looking 100% whenever we didn't get to see him for so much of the year.
Yeah. Next up for Alabama is Georgia at home. It's a 3 p.m. tip on ESPN2. Love to see that 3 p.m. tip after an 8 p.m. tip. That's a nice one. The Bulldogs are 15-6, 3-5 in SEC play. They had lost 4 in a row, but then beat South Carolina last time out. Just when you look at this game against Georgia, Tim, a couple familiar faces over there, but this is a game that Alabama doesn't need to overlook. It should win, but you don't want to have kind of a repeat of some past performances here of late.
No, I think this is just because, every game's so important right now because till you get to that 7-game stretch, right? Anything leading up to it's a dagger. It felt like, Ole Miss was a dagger because you're going to Kentucky. You kind of pulled that back when you won at Kentucky. If you lose this game at Mississippi State, it's a little bit of a dagger. It really hurts your chances. Auburn's sitting over there undefeated in the SEC. So you're really trying to keep pace with them because you got head-to-head twice with them. So you're still controlling your own destiny, so to speak. So Georgia, I think, is a team, again, not in that top. We're not talking about them as much as we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think they've ran off 4 or 5 losses. I think they won a game in there somewhere, but I know they lost to Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, very tough stretch of their own. They've had a couple of losses. I think I looked it up. They're 1-5 in their last 6, beat South Carolina. So not teams we were talking about as much, but they've got some talent. Obviously, they've got Ace and Newell, who, Bama was really hard after in the recruiting process. True freshman leading them in scoring. So obviously, team you don't want to look like. I'm not going to overlook them like Blake does every week.
That's what I was going to say. Like, Blake, do you want to say anything nice about the Georgia Bulldogs?
I'm talking them up like we're playing Duke in Cameron right now.
Listen, this team's Georgia's good.
Okay, wow.
Here we go.
Georgia's a tournament team. LSU's not, so I don't feel as bad for that one still. Like Georgia's probably gonna be in the tournament. They were in the top 25 like a week and a half ago. This team's got a lot of talent. They've got Asa Newell, like you said. Cyril is absolutely massive on the inside. Their center. They've got good guards and wings with Blue Kane, Tyron Lawrence, Silas Demery. Like they got a lot of guys that can score. It's going to be a tough game. That's how it is in the SEC. Like every single team is capable of beating you. I think what stands out about Georgia really is that they're what are they in the SEC? What did you just say they were?
They are 3-5.
Yeah, so they're like in the bottom half of the SEC. They're probably going to be playing on Wednesday in the SEC tournament. And when you look at KenPom, they're 37th. They're a top 40 team. And so that just shows how deep the league is, how talented a team like Georgia is, even though they've lost a couple of games. I'm looking at their schedule. Their really only bad loss is losing to Arkansas in a game they absolutely blew on the road. And so still on the road. So like whatever. But I mean, they beat South Carolina, beat Oklahoma. They beat Kentucky. They beat Kentucky in Athens. Like they took Auburn to the wire in Athens and could have sent it to overtime if Asa Newell put a little more on that tip in at the end of the game. So this is a team that's fully capable of beating Alabama if they come into the game and have an Ole Miss or first half LSU like performance from an effort standpoint. I imagine that's what we're going to hear Oates talk about on Friday. Again, coming off of a tough, hard-fought, emotional road win, going back at home, like that's definitely going to be the message they're preaching, and it's going to be interesting to see them respond. I feel like Alabama will probably be favored by like 10 or so in this game. Yep. I'm interested to see if, like you said, Charlie, they can finally have a game where they step on somebody's neck and they go on a run and they really put their foot on the gas and extend the lead and blow someone out. I don't know if that's going to happen in this game. It would be cool to see because they really haven't done it since they beat South Carolina by 20 on the road. And then the game before that, they beat Oklahoma by like 30. And so that was the last time you really saw them destroy a team. It would be nice to see a home game performance. They've been a little shaky at home for whatever reason while they've been great on the road. It'd be nice to see a consistent full 40-minute performance at home. So that's really what I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully seeing on Saturday.
We'll get out of here.
One thing I was going to say, I really feel like this team, I was going to ask you if y'all agree. I feel like they want to be the hunted, not the hunter. I feel like when they're the underdog, they're the villain, that they rise up better. I don't think they like necessarily being the leader, in the race. I think they like trying to chase that down, which is hard when you're a top 5 team and you're as good as you are. So I think that is kind of our concern when you look at it. Are they going to get, Ole Miss, really good team, really bad night? I think that Ole Miss game kind of opened us up to every game you got to play like this. I think we have more faith in them in many ways in the big games than we do in some of these other games because we're almost like, shoot, we got to focus right now, I think that's part of the mentality of this team.
No, I definitely think that they embrace the challenge. They rise to the occasion. At least they have for most of the year so far. And that's the thing about the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss isn't bad. Like Nate Oates has said it multiple times. Yeah. Like he doesn't understand how they didn't get up for that game. I guess it's just the name on the jersey. Maybe it's Kentucky being the next game. I don't know. But now we'll get out of here on this. This is actually something that Tim brought up last week. I thought it was a good question because now that we're through January, you basically have a month left in the regular season. Where do we think the SEC Coach of the Year race sits right now? Is it just Bruce versus Nate, or is there somebody else, like a dark horse in there? Like, where do you think it sits right now with February and a little bit of March to go, Tim?
I mean, I can name 5 guys that should be in consideration. I mean, you look at Golden at Florida, Mark Popes did a good job. Kind of felt he might be slipping until he won at Tennessee in a convincing fashion. Gates in Missouri. I mean, all these. I mean, you can look the Georgia. You can look at every. It's hard to say. Here's my answer. I just know it's not Coach Cal. I know who's not Coach of the Year.
Jesus,
I've narrowed it down. I've eliminated one. Blake's
got a top
be,
15.
We're narrowed it to. I'm like these recruits now. Hayes, give me a graphic. I got a top 15. There's so many. I don't think you can overlook Bruce Pearl. For what you don't punish people for being really good. And the same goes for Nate. You don't punish people for being really good. They should be up there. But the world does tend to look at, hey, they were 17th and finished 12th. What a glow up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are other worthy candidates, but it's tough right now, at least, and there's still plenty of basketball to go, and we'll learn a lot about Alabama during that 7-game stretch in the season. But the way that Auburn and Alabama have both played this season, it's tough not to think that it's Bruce and Nate right now, at least the leading the pack. There's still plenty to go, at least a turn or two in this race. But when you look at the SEC Coach of the Year battle, Blake, just where do you think it stands? And maybe is there someone we're not talking about?
Yeah, I think it's Bruce until it's not right now, just because they haven't lost a game and they've been as good as they have been the best team in the country. I think there are a lot of guys that deserve recognition. Mark Pope, what he's done at Kentucky, taking over a roster that had 0 players and building them into kind of what they are right now in one off season has been great. I think Dennis Gates going from 0-18 in the league last year to being, I think they're top 4. Currently in the SEC standings, 5-2. That's really impressive. Mark Byington at Vanderbilt has them ranked for the first time in like 15 years or something like that. Like, that's really impressive to have Vanderbilt playing as well as they are, especially after 5 years of I thought Jerry Stackhouse could get them closer to this level, but after 5 seasons there, he never did. And for Byington to do that with an immediate turnaround, like, that's really impressive. But I do think it's Pearl right now. But if we get to February 15th in about 2 weeks and Alabama has a win over Auburn under their belt, that might flip. And you might see Nate Oates become the leader as Alabama works towards potentially winning an SEC regular season title. I think they've got a good chance. And if you see Alabama go through this gauntlet at the end of the season and only lose 1 or 2 games in it and win the regular season title, I bet you could see Nate Oates end up being your SEC Coach of the Year. I feel like it's hard. It's weird because you hear people talk about National Coach of the Year, and Mark Pope is a really popular name as far as that goes, alongside like Bruce Pearl and guys like that. But it feels different when you're looking from a national perspective versus when you're just looking at the league, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but that's just kind of how the perspective has seemed to be. Like, Pope is getting way more talk for National Coach of the Year, but whenever you look at the SEC, it kind of feels obvious that it's Pearl with how they're performing in league play. It's interesting, but I don't think Nate Oates is out of it by any means. I think go beat Auburn and win some other games, and he's right there in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dennis Gates is a good pull because you're right. The 0-18 last year, now to be 5-2 in SEC play, I think deserves to be recognized. When you look at Kentucky, I think the SEC Coach of the Year and the National Coach of the Year, they look at the overall picture, not just league play. So that might be some of it. But yeah, with Nate Oates, just the fact that you've gotten to this point, 18-3, 7-1 in league play entering the month of February, and you've done it without Latrell Reitzel for a long stretch of the season. You did it without Chris Youngblood to start the year. No Houston Millette. You've had guys missing from the lineup because of injury, guys like Darion Reed. You're putting together a new roster. I think that gets slept on quite a bit. And I know obviously we pay a lot of attention to Alabama because that's our jobs, but I think he should be commended for this so far. And like you said, Blake, if he's able to go out here in this last final stretch and take care of business, I don't know why he wouldn't be near the top of that list. So it'll be something interesting to follow here down the final stretch. We'll be in Coleman Coliseum on Saturday for the Georgia game, and hopefully Blake's niceties toward the Bulldogs will be will be good for us. But we'll have it all covered on BamaOnLine.com. Blake did a good job in Starkville last night. I have plenty of Senior Bowl stuff to come. I know Tim will be super busy this weekend with a big Junior Day coming up. So stay locked in at BOL Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't, give us a thumbs up. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening via podcast, 5 stars. We really appreciate that. We enjoyed this show, and we'll see you guys on the next one.